Alright, I am Justin Hanley, and this is the importance of ethical interrogations. So, just going on with the abstract, interrogations are an important role of any criminal investigation. They allow law enforcement to present evidence and try to obtain confessions from suspects. Today, there are many small details like time limits, Miranda warnings, case laws, and procedures that must be followed to ensure interrogation is ethical and does not lead to false confessions. These are extremely important in our justice system, but that was not always the case. So first, a lot of people get confused. What is the difference between an interview and interrogation? So basically, textbook definitions: an interview, a meeting in which information is obtained from a person. An interrogation, to question formally or systematically. So right away off textbook definitions, it really doesn't give you too much on what they really are if you don't know prior knowledge. So basically, an interview does not need to be with a suspect. It can be obtaining a statement from a witness or victim. During an interview, the subject is not being detained and has free will to leave at any time. Miranda warning is also not required during an interview. So when you think of an interview, think of it as showing up to a scene, speaking with, like it says, witnesses, victims, anybody that's been in the area. You're basically just gathering information. It's pretty informal. If someone wants to leave, they're allowed to leave. They're not being detained. When we go to interrogations, though, it's more formal. So it's conducted with suspects in cases, and it's to obtain information for confessions. The subject is formally detained, which means they are not allowed to leave. Once they're not allowed to leave, Miranda must be read. So just going back on a brief history of interrogations to get to where we were today. Throughout history, crimes have been committed and investigated. The process of obtaining confessions has not always been what we are used to in modern society. In the past, before citizens had rights, there was no process to ensure a confession was legitimate. It's unknown how many people confessed to crimes they never committed. Physical torture was actually used in confessions. This was a common practice all the way until 1936. During times like Salem witch trials in the 1600s, individuals did not have a chance to be interrogated. They would be found guilty based solely on accusations, which led to numerous innocent deaths. But what changed and why? How did we go from people being able to accuse someone else of witchcraft, causing them to be killed, or physically tortured for information, to where we have it today with Miranda? One of the first steps was the Constitution. So obviously it was established in 1787. And the two amendments in the Constitution that really hit home for interrogation and making sure that it's done ethically is the Fifth and Sixth Amendment. So your Fifth Amendment is the right to remain silent, along with other things, but that's the important part for interrogation. And the Sixth Amendment is your right to legal representation. Another big case was Miranda versus Arizona. In Miranda versus Arizona, Ernesto Miranda confessed after 2 hours of interrogation without knowing his constitutional rights. Even though the Constitution gave citizens rights during interrogation with the Fifth and Sixth Amendments, there were still cops who had not advised suspects of these rights. The Supreme Court obviously ruled in favor of Miranda, which now led to us having the Miranda warnings. Another big case was Brown v. Mississippi. In 1936, Brown v. Mississippi determined that confessions obtained through violence, such as beating and hangings, could not be entered as evidence at trials. This was a big step forward with ethical interrogations, because the court recognized that people could be forced to make false confessions. Going into false confessions, a case that stuck out to me was the Central Park Five. In 1989, a woman was attacked and raped while jogging in New York City. The victim went into a coma for 12 days. She couldn't remember who the person was, no details. She just could say it was a Hispanic male. There were 5 suspects that were all teenagers in the park underneath the age of 18. There was DNA evidence found, but the DNA evidence didn't match any of the teenagers. The 5 teenagers were questioned for over 7 hours alone without their parents. This led to all 5 juveniles having confessions to crimes they had never committed. At the time, to have all 5 of them confess to a crime with being separately interrogated, they thought they had a surefire case. But the juveniles were convicted 6 to 13 years and obviously found guilty, even though the DNA didn't match. All 5 would later be released from prison and won settlements against the city of New York after suing them for false imprisonment. The actual attacker in this case, who's actually served prison time with one of the Central Park Five, came forward later in life and admitted to doing the crimes. He was able to tell law enforcement details that they didn't know. And once DNA was tested, it was actually a match. So 5 juveniles were interrogated without their parents, confessed, and served prison time for a crime they did not commit, even when DNA did not put them at the crime scene. So, in conclusion, the American justice system is known to be one of the best in the world. Obviously, we're leading the forefront, but we didn't get here overnight. We just continue to use the thought of innocent. We must continue to use the thought of innocent until proven guilty when talking about interrogations. We all want to catch the people who commit crimes. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure on law enforcement to try to catch people that commit these crimes, but you have to do it ethically. There's a process, and the process is there for a reason. We have to make sure that the people that commit these crimes are being caught, and we're not just putting innocent people behind bars so that way we can close cases. That will be the conclusion of my PowerPoint on ethical interrogations.